Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Season 2 of the Duke Football Coverage Podcast, brought to you as always by Bull City Coordinators. You can follow us on our website, bullcitycoordinators.com. Check us out on Twitter at Duke FB Coverage, and you can find us anywhere that you listen to your podcast. We are on Anchor, Apple, Google, Spotify, et cetera, so forth. Pretty much everywhere you listen to your podcast, you can find us. Now, our next guest, until recently, was a wide receiver for the Blue Devils, and I'm not at all angry, bitter, or upset that he couldn't wait a couple of days till he was going to do the scheduled interview with me to break the news of where he was going into the transfer portal. Totally not upset about that at all, but my first question to our next guest, Jake Bobo, is why not just wait a couple of days to announce here on the Duke Football Coverage podcast?
I would have, man. That's a great idea. I would have 100%. The only thing was I was getting some pressure from certain schools' admissions departments. That was the only hang up. But that was my plan going in, to be honest with you.
All right. Speaking of certain schools, a buddy of mine, Dan Sullivan, big Notre Dame fan, is a little upset that you're not going to play for the Irish. Is there anything you'd like to say to Dan to make him feel better right now?
Not a whole lot. Good luck next year. I'm looking forward to watching the Irish. I like Marcus Freeman. I think that's a great hire. So he's got that going for him.
He was excited about that. He was not surprised that Brian Kelly left the way Brian Kelly left.
Yeah.
You don't need to comment on that if you don't want to, but Dan was having a rough day when I ran into him trying to process that.
Yeah, no doubt.
All right, so now that you are at UCLA, though, and you're in the process of going over there, tell us what made you decide to be a Bruin next season.
I think it was a combo of a lot of things, the right combo of a lot of things. I like the culture, that squad and that program. I like the staff under Chip Kelly. And then I like the scheme offensively and what Coach Kelly brings to the table. I think, not necessarily for me as an individual, but he diversifies a lot of his schemes, game planning wise. And then at its foundation as well. So I'm excited to get in there and get to work. But it was just a good fit. I'm excited to be there, and then I'll head over there, start of January, and get to it.
Tell us a little bit about what brought you to Duke in the first place.
Yeah, I think I put a lot of it on Coach Cut. Him, the academic reputation that Duke has on the other side of campus, obviously was exciting to me, exciting to my family, my mother especially. But with that being said, I thought at Duke too that you can win at Duke. I think that's still 100% the case. But I was enticed by the national brand, ACC Power 5 football. But then I was excited to get that degree as well, no doubt.
You started with some playing time early your freshman season, which, if I remember correctly, was 2018, right?
It was, yeah.
What was it that caused you to differentiate yourself from some of the other players and to get meaningful opportunities early on?
I don't know. I think you'd have to go ask Cut and Coach Parker, who was the receivers coach at the time, to get the full answer on that question. I think, at the time it was a good fit. Was being played in the slot and had a couple older guys outside, and then was able to learn from guys like TJ Ramming and Keaston Fuller, who, I incorporate a lot of the stuff that they've taught me into my game today. So I think being mentored by those guys in the summer and then that camp did a lot for me going into that season. I think my football IQ, not to toot my own horn, but when you're not physically as gifted as some of the other guys on the field, you got to do some other things to differentiate yourself. And I think that certainly helped in that regard, in that position as well.
You played with a different starting quarterback every year that you were at Duke. What was that like for you going from season to season, adjusting to a new quarterback?
Yeah. What's interesting dynamic because people always talk about that kind of stuff, like how that affects receivers, how that affects offensive lines. But I think the interesting part about that was, so my freshman year, I was running a lot with the twos because we had at my position, TJ Raymond was the guy. But the twos that year was Q and was Quinn Harris. And then, we were bumped up the next year and played together some as well. And then going back to my freshman year, I played a lot with Gunner too. Now you throw Chase Bryce in there, and he's a great dude, great player, but doesn't necessarily fit that pattern. Excuse me. But the interesting part about that is I'd played with a lot of those guys before. Like I'd gotten a considerable amount of snaps with Q and with Gunner, far before they started, which was an interesting aspect of the transition. And, people always talk about you have 4 different starting quarterbacks. Well, you're not, it's not like you're coming in cold with those guys. Gunner's a great friend of mine. Q's a great friend of mine. That certainly helps. CB, obviously, he was thrown in the fire, so that's a little bit of a different situation. But I don't think it was that big of a deal as sometimes people make it seem.
Well, walk us through, since you mentioned Chase Bryce there, what the 2020 season was like with all the COVID restrictions and the way that Duke approached it maybe as compared to some other schools and how that kind of affected you guys.
It was hard. I mean, that whole year was hard for everybody, not just, Duke football. But on the football side of things, it showed. I think it showed a lot that year. Not getting back and having an off season, especially at a program like Duke, developmental program, it doesn't just, churn guys out. We need off seasons, and they definitely work to our advantage. Now, with that being said, we didn't have one. So obviously that hurt in that regard. I think getting back late, that hurt a little bit mentally on the mental side of things, especially for the younger guys, seeing other schools go back and wondering why we weren't back. Now, older guys like me kind of knew the situation and how Duke and the Duke administration handle things. To me, they did the right way. But that has an effect mentally on some of the younger guys and the guys that don't necessarily get the place that they're at. But and physically, I mentioned before, not having those off-season workouts, that's a killer. And obviously it showed that fall.
Well, you've talked a little bit about playing with Gunnar Holmberg. You two seem to have a real rhythm this season. It seemed like every time we blinked, he was throwing another ball to you and you were going up high to catch it. Could you just talk a little bit about where that connection came from?
Yeah. I think it's entirely an off the field deal. Came in roommates, one of my best friends in my 4 years here. And I think that's honestly the best recipe you can have for a quarterback and receiver, a quarterback and anybody, offensive lineman, running back, whatever is if there's a connection off the field, you're going to see it on the field. And I think what we had was special. And I think you saw that on Saturdays as well.
Tell us a little bit about the work ethic and the routine that the two of you had and that you put in together to really have that connection and make plays when you had the opportunity.
Yeah, that's all off season. And we talked about not having an off season before 2020. But you saw some of that stuff play out. Having a spring and having a summer this year was huge for us, specifically me and Gunnar and a couple other receivers, defensively, just every position, being able to get considerable hours in the weight room, considerably more hours on the field than they did the year before. But again, I touched on me and Gunnar getting reps together since our freshman year, and that's 4 years in the making. So I would hope, to a certain extent, there'd be a little bit of a visual result on that. And I think, you guys definitely saw that on Saturdays this year.
Tell us a little bit about, we see you guys with pads on, with helmets on. We don't really get to know you as well personally. Just tell us a little bit about yourself that we as fans may not know, that may help us understand your approach to football and how you play, why you play the way that you do a little bit better.
Yeah. It's a good question. I think
I mean,
I love.
I ask questions for a living, so I hope I've gotten good at it now. I'm always
Congratulations.
pleased. Yeah.
That's a good question. I don't necessarily. I can't point to a certain thing and why I love playing the game. I think a lot of that comes from my dad and my familial background, of just seeing him grow up. He was a coach, an assistant at the high school where I played. So I think I get a lot of love for this game from him, and using him as my role model, which I've definitely done for my entire life. Outside of ball, I mean, as a college athlete, you don't necessarily get a whole lot of time to yourself, but I enjoy hooking up the PlayStation and going at it in Madden or FIFA, Call of Duty, what have you. I'll whoop anybody's tail on that end. Big music guy. Have gotten into a lot of country since these last 4 years being down here. But hip hop guy as well, and then I'll get into some pop and stuff like that as well. But I mean, a little bit of everything. I don't have any big hobbies. Like I'm not trying to get my boating license or be a pilot in my free time or anything like that. That's kind of just me though.
Well, piloting is expensive.
Yeah, it's true. I guess so is sailing too, though, right?
Boating also is dangerous, especially around holidays. So steer clear of
those. Yeah, no. I'll try to in the future.
Stay on land. Trust me. I do a lot of personal injury work. Stay away from lakes, big get-togethers at holidays. Just trust me.
So no water skiing is what you're telling me?
Well, certainly not if you're going to go play football next year at UCLA.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. I think your coaches may have some problems with that. You were a captain this season. Tell us what the responsibility of being a captain meant to you.
I think being a captain, especially in the game of football, is all about unity, to me, and being able to keep a team together, highs and lows, especially through the lows, which we had a lot of this year. So it was definitely good for me to just, personal development to be in that situation. But it was an honor to lead these guys. I think going in, I've always kind of been a lead by example type dude, and became a little bit more vocal this year, which is something that I needed to do. And I feel like I did do. Obviously, need to ask some more of the guys how I did. It was a lot of fun. I think that the aim is, just keep a group of young men, keep a group of your friends. My best friends are on the team, keeping guys together when things go right and when things go wrong. I think as a captain, that's your job. And to do that, you can never get too high and never get too low. And that's something that I always tried to do. I know I got a lot of help from Gunner, Wayne, and Lenny as well. He was a great addition halfway through the year. That was awesome to see some of those guys lead as well. But yeah, for me, it was always about keeping a level head and trying to get guys to be themselves and play for each other. I think is the most powerful thing in the game of football. It's in my opinion, the best team game in the world. And in order to do that, you got to play like a team. And I try to do my best this year. Wish we could have got a little bit more out of it on the wins and losses end, but we had a lot of fun. So stack it up there,
Coach Boyette was your position coach this season. Tell us a little bit about Coach Boyette, what kind of guy he is, what kind of coach he is.
Yeah. Coach Boyette is awesome. One of the best coaches I've ever had. He's fiery. He will light a fire under your tail without a doubt. And he's a guy that, I'd follow that guy into battle any day of the week. And whatever it was, football, whatever, I'm following that guy. That guy is a natural leader. And it was cool to see him transition from being a running back, and therefore coaching running backs to then coming over and coaching receivers. I think being a good coach, you got to be able to coach a lot of positions. And he did that. I mean, you saw our production this year was solid, and made a lot of steps from some of the other years that I've been here. And I attribute that all to him and some of the schemes and stuff that him and Coach Ferris cooked up for us. And then some of the technique stuff he taught me as well is something that I'm going to continue to use as a receiver throughout my career.
One of the things that you mentioned were you wish you'd gotten a little bit more from the wins and losses. What were the ups and downs of this season like? I mean, you start with a heartbreaking loss at Charlotte, then you win 3 straight, then the wheels just come off and they don't ever seem to get back on. What was that like for you guys?
It was an interesting deal because, to me, if one or two of those first half of the season games go our way, it's an entirely different season. I think, we were talking with some of the guys, some of the coaches about, we were 2 snaps away from realistically being 5-2. If, we recover the sack fumble against Charlotte on their last drive where they went down and won it. And then I think we had another strip sack against Georgia Tech on their last drive when they went down and won that game as well. So that's, 2 snaps that could have determined 2 wins. Now, obviously, there's a whole lot more that go into winning games than that. Hindsight is always 20/20. But with that being said, I think if we win that Georgia Tech game, that Carolina game, that Virginia game, that Wake Forest game, those games are entirely different. I think if we get that one, that definitely deflated a lot of the guys on the team, myself included, to a certain extent. But winning games leads to winning more games. Losing games leads to losing more games, which is something you have to fight as a football team. But it just seems like a natural occurrence. Like that's kind of how things roll. And it was tough to see this year, but as I said, a whole lot of things we learned, a whole lot of things that I hope those younger guys learned going through this so that they can use this year to stack up, a couple of good years going forward.
Well, you guys kept fighting each week. Where did you guys find that resiliency to, even though the wins and losses weren't going your way, to at least keep coming out there and giving it your all?
Yeah, I think a lot of that comes from each other. And these guys on this team did a great job of if nothing else, buy into each other. And I think that is illustrated in our continued fight when things weren't going our way. But then the other thing is just as human beings, at least especially at this level, I hope guys wouldn't just, quit on a season. I think as men, you kind of got, you got to stick your chest out and have a little pride at certain points, especially playing this game. We were blessed and lucky to be playing the game and be in the position that we are. And I think a lot of guys, realize that and take advantage of that. And I think that's kind of how you got to play this game is you're doing it an injustice if you don't go out every weekend and give it everything you got. So I think, those 2 things are especially where that continued fight came from.
What was it like when the season ends and then the announcement's made about the end of the Cutcliffe era? I mean, you'd been there 2018 till the present. How did that affect you? How did that affect the players? Could you comment on that a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, that's always hard. That's, people you've been around and have mentored you for 4 years. And that's a considerable chunk of our lives, especially as, 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds. That's a difficult thing to grasp. Now, there's that side of things and the more personal side of things, but also, change can do a lot of good things. And I mean that in the most general sense, especially with this team where this team is young still. And I think this change let a lot of people on the team know that they're important and that what they're doing is important to the school. So that part was good to see, the school, fighting for some of these kids and fighting for the success of some of these kids was cool. But again, it's always hard. I mean, Coach Cutcliffe is an amazing human being, a guy that, like Boyette, is a natural leader and a guy that we fought for till the final whistle of that Miami game. So it was hard for, for us to see him to leave. But again, I felt, it was time, and I'm excited for this opportunity for some of the guys that, the young guys on the team.
There was a shot of you after the Miami game, just kind of sitting out, looking out at the stadium. Could you comment on that, kind of how that came about, what was going through your mind?
Yeah. I would say just kind of gratitude, and the sense of thankfulness that you get for this school and for this program specifically. It's a very special place. I think it's a unique place. And we'll always hold a special place in my heart. I'm incredibly thankful to Cutcliffe and the entire Duke program, the entire, school that is Duke University for the opportunity that I was given. Had a lot of fun, had a lot of memories made, made my best friends at this school. And so that moment kind of culminated and just heading back down and looking back over the field one more time before I headed back up to the locker room and just thanking the man above for everything that he's given me, this opportunity that he's given me, but then also, take one more look and kind of reminisce on the lessons learned in the past, but also the good times as well. So
looking back on your time in Durham, what do you think you're going to be most proud of looking back? It could be classroom, academics, completely off-campus stuff maybe you don't want to tell us about, or on the field, off the field, anything.
Not proud of a whole lot. That doesn't have anything to do with Duke, like you were saying. Socially, not a whole lot to be proud of there. However, I am, I'm proud of exactly what you said in the previous question, of this team continuing to fight after losing whatever it was 7-8 in a row. I think leading those guys and seeing those guys in their fight and their continued fight, even though they were getting punched in the face every Saturday, and seeing them get up and get excited and get ready to go every Saturday, and then obviously see it crumble on the afternoon of said Saturday. But I was just incredibly proud and humble and grateful to be able, to be a part of that. As I said, wish we could have done a little bit more with the wins and losses. But my proudest moment here is being able to lead that team, even though we weren't, I don't think people would say we had a lot of success. It felt like we did in that locker room, especially. So that's probably the thing I'm most proud of in these last couple of years.
Now, this season in particular, I felt that a lot of the social media got a little toxic from the fans as the losses piled up, just because there was a lot of pent up bitterness. And
yeah, no doubt.
I've taken an approach, and the Section 17 guys also have taken an approach. We don't criticize players.
Yeah.
Not everybody, though, on social media is like that. Could you give any advice to fans of the program about good ways to conduct your affairs on social media in regard, particularly in respect to players?
Yeah. It's an interesting one. Because on one hand, I feel like it's something you kind of sign up for, as a Division I Power 5 football player. You sign up for everything that comes with the good and the bad. Now, with that being said, there are ways to do it. Like you said, I'm a big fan of how you and then how those guys over at Section 17 handle stuff on Twitter and social media and stuff like that. The rule I would keep in mind is, what if that was your son? What if that was your friend out there giving everything he's got for your school? And as a fan, how would you treat your son or, one of your best friends who were not necessarily doing what they needed to do, but we're trying their best to do it. So there's that end of things as well. I'm torn on it. But again, I don't know if it necessarily affected me or the other guys on the squad. It kind of just is what it is in college football at this point, especially.
Do you guys kind of detox from social media at any point?
I Saturdays I will try to not go on any social media, whether that's Twitter, Instagram, what have you. That's kind of my rule is to stay off it after the game on Saturdays and then into Sunday if it was it's an especially tough day. I try to. I think I'm always on Twitter. I'm always on Instagram. But yeah, I definitely steer clear those couple hours afterward.
What are you looking forward to next season at UCLA? Tell the Bruin Nation out there what to expect from Jake Bobo.
Yeah, I'm just one. I'm excited at its foundation to play another year. Fifth year, didn't know I was going to get it. But one positive of COVID is that I will, and I'm excited. I'm really excited to go out there and compete. I think the interesting thing about UCLA is it's an extremely talented roster with an extremely talented staff. And it seems to me, at least looking at it right now, and I think it will continue to seem to me that that's a great spot to compete for the Pac-12 championship. And, that's what I want to do. I want to compete for conference championships. I want to compete for national championships. And I think UCLA gave me the best spot to do that. And I'm really excited. I'm thankful for that staff to, give me that opportunity. But gonna get a guy that comes in and works his butt off every day. Might not be the most talented in the room, but I pride myself on being the hardest worker, without a doubt. So that's something that I'm looking forward to, and that you guys will definitely see. Hopefully, if you're watching, I know there's probably what over here it's probably 11 o'clock kickoffs out on the West Coast, but hopefully a few of you guys will tune in.
Well, I'll try, but
no promises.
Yeah, no, I'm 40 and I've gotten too old for this to stay.
Hey, I don't blame you. Saturday, I don't know how many Pac-12 games I've watched this year. Probably close to zero.
Yeah, I think if we're not watching, don't take it personally.
Oh, I won't. Believe me. Don't worry about that.
It's the scheduling. But we're definitely going to be rooting. All of us Blue Devil fans are going to be rooting for you, just like we've been rooting for Britton Brown.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it.
Well, is there anything else that you would like to say right now? I'd like to give the guys who come on an open mic to talk about anything that is of interest to them, anything that they want to chat about. The floor is yours.
I think the only thing, right now is just to say thank you to you guys. I mean, specifically off the top of my head is, your podcast and your coverage of the program, and then those guys over at Section 17. Just thank you for your continued support, and the unwavering support that you guys have shown over the last 4 years. For me, it has meant a lot. And you can tell, and a fan base, it's not necessarily huge. You know who's got your back, and who's interested, and who's got your support, and we know we had yours the entire time I've been here, and so I want to thank you for that. I hope the guys over at Section 17 hear that as well. But it means more than I know at the base of it, you guys are fans, but it seems to me like it's a little bit more, and we definitely appreciate you guys for it, no doubt.
Well, we appreciate that, and I've been watching a lot of Duke football. Grew up watching it. This is, I'm sure, way before your time. JP Raycom Sports was the thing down south, and me and my dad would watch the game. I don't know, because they were not good then. Okay, yeah. They were bad. I don't know what I did to make my dad angry or to be punished with that. But we watched a lot of not great football. So
yeah.
It's been a lot of fun for me.
I commend you for it, no doubt.
Well, it's been a lot of fun for me to transition this. You mentioned kind of things you get from COVID. I'm a trial attorney, and actually Monday and Tuesday I tried my first jury trial.
All right.
So
congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. It was fun to be back in the saddle again, but with some of the downtime I had last year, this is what made me start doing the podcast. So
yeah. No, I get it. It's great though. Keep doing what you're doing. I know those guys in the locker room down there appreciate it, no doubt.
Well, good. If they want to come on, get them in touch with your guy Ryan.
I will. Wolitzer.
You know, get him set it up. I'd be happy to have him on. I've got guests booked into February, but then after that, we got a lot of free time, and we're going way back. We got Dave Brown from back in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, sure.
Played. Where did you grow up?
I grew up north of Boston. 30 minutes north of the city. So wasn't a huge Duke fan growing up.
Okay, yeah, because he was playing for the Giants and the Cardinals, so you probably weren't really rooting for him.
No.
Yeah. Well, Jake, thanks for coming on tonight. I really appreciate it. I appreciate all your time at Duke. You were a fun guy to watch play, man.
Appreciate it. Thanks, man.
Really enjoyed watching you play. You left it out on the field. And, you know, you commented this on the wins and losses. We as fans would have loved to see you get a few more, but you know what? The ball doesn't always bounce your way, and you played hard.
Damn right.
You got nothing that you can regret. So fans who are out there, stay tuned. We got more episodes coming. Go to our website, bullcitycoordinators.com. Follow us on Twitter at Duke FB Coverage, and we will see you back for our next guest, which I don't even remember what day of the week it is now, because when you don't try a jury trial for 2.5 years, you forget how tired you get after you try one. So I'm gonna get my wits back with me and get back to work, and we'll keep lining these guests up and having them on, and we'll do it as long as we can. Go Duke.